The suicide rate in construction is 53.4 for 100,000 people. And we've got to change the way our industry works.
This is the Construction Veteran Podcast. Construction Veterans Podcast. Connecting and celebrating veterans in construction. Now, here's your host, Scott Friend.
Welcome back to the Construction Veteran Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friend. I'm excited to bring you Brian Winningham, a former Army Ranger who's worked with some very reputable companies within our industry and has many years of knowledge to bring to the table. He's also leading the charge in changing the way our industry values its people. Let's dig into it. Hey, Brian, how's it going, man?
It's going great. How are you, Scott?
I'm good. Man, I'm very happy that we were able to finally link up. I feel like I was blowing you off for a while. It certainly wasn't intentional, but really glad we're linking up. Brian and I know each other.
It didn't feel that way. It just felt like springtime and all the crap that goes on during springtime. So it didn't feel like you were blowing me off at all.
Good.
I promise.
Good. It's the industry, man. I mean, we're always people. I hate when people ask, "Are you busy?" Yes, always. I'm always busy. So, what a bad question. So Brian and I, we haven't officially met in person. We're not too far from each other, but we know a lot of the same folks within the industry. Within the lean side of the industry. So we'll get into a little bit about what that means and what he does in that arena within the industry. But Brian, I want to hear from you. So it's a veteran podcast, and I want to let you introduce yourself, what your service background is, how you got into it, and we'll get into kind of what you took away from it and what you do now. So what's your service background?
I was with 3rd Ranger Battalion back a long time ago, 1988 to 1992. I participated in the Operation Just Cause, the liberation of Panama, whatever they're calling it these days, to capture Noriega, basically, who passed away just a few years ago, I guess, in jail in Miami, I believe. But that's I was made E5. I went to Ranger School. I was mortars, so I'm wired a little bit differently because all mortars are. I think a little bit like Seabees, wired a little bit differently. But spent 4 years in, messed up my knee, got out, and went to school for a little while, and got a job back in the industry, and ended up where I am today, which we'll go into a little bit more.
For sure. Yeah. Good stuff. So where are you from? So let's talk about how you grew up, what interested you in the military, and how you actually got into it.
Well, like a lot of folks, I was at a point where things weren't working, and I ended up making a decision to join the military. I'd worked in construction from the time I was 10. Started off working for a little lumber company in my hometown that sold paint and nails and everything in between, and also built houses and stuff like that. So really, really interesting and such a great education too, and I got to spend time out in the field there as well as waiting on customers in the store. So I got a lot of different exposure to a lot of different things, retail and learning about the building trades, and then even going out and working in the field there. Spent some time pipelining right after high school before I started college, and had a job up in Northwest Arkansas where, I probably spent more time with explosives there than I ever did in the military, to be honest with you, even though I was a mortar. We were putting in sewer and water line in Northwest Arkansas, and some of those sewer lines were 30, 35 foot deep up in the mountains there. So I think we had 27 miles of water line and 30 miles of sewer, and we ended up shooting like 95% of that whole of every bit of the right of way there. So it was a really interesting job, and I did everything there from operate equipment to load dynamite, drill the dynamite holes. It was quite an experience, and did a lot of different jobs like that. I was a pipe fitter's apprentice. Spent a lot of time working in the field in construction. I don't think there's too many jobs I haven't done in construction in the field. So followed a welder around a few times, and just a little bit of everything. But got to a point where, I was 21 years old and wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, and just trying to figure things out, and figured I needed to do a little growing up. So I decided that, the Army was probably the best place for me to do that. So I ended up joining. Had airborne in my contract, so I knew I was probably going to the 82nd. And that's where I had orders for, but the Rangers came around in airborne school, and I volunteered there, and ended up staying at Fort Benning the whole time I was in the Army. So jumped out of a few airplanes, even got as far as getting, I didn't get my Master Blaster wings, but I did go to, oh gosh, I can't think of it, Jump Master School. So I was a jump master. I helped put people out of airplanes. It was interesting. It was a lot of fun. I have to say there was probably never a time I jumped out of airplanes when I wasn't scared and thought I was probably going to die. I didn't like it a lot, but it was very exciting.
Man, that's just what you want to hear from the jump master. I think I'm going to die. No, that's cool, man. That's a big accomplishment too, because that school's no joke. I mean, I know Ranger School is very difficult, but Jumpmaster School, that's tough
Ranger
stuff.
School was interesting. I went the long route, and I ended up recycling one phase and had to go back through. But I did graduate and went on and led a squad there. And I was on a jump and ended up messing up my knee, and ended up getting out. This was right around the time that Clinton was doing a big drawdown in the service, so it was fairly easy to get them to give me some money and tell me to go away. So, especially with my knee messed up. So I did that. Went back to school, ended up back in construction working for Natkin. They're a mechanical contractor. Did some work for them for a while, and then they got sold and were going out of business for the area where I was, and I ended up just deciding what I wanted to do, and I ended up in California. And that's where I went to work for a company called PCL Construction. They're pretty big. They did, back when I was there, I think they were doing, 4 or 5 billion a year. And now it's probably 8 or 10. I don't know. I haven't looked in a long time, but, they're an international company. They started in Canada, and they do some work in Australia as well as in the States. Pretty big. But I was living in Los Angeles, and my wife and our children, I had a 7-year-old at the time and a brand new baby also, or 9-year-old, I'm sorry, 9-year-old and a brand new baby. And we got the opportunity to move to Texas. Got an opportunity with Skanska, and worked for them for about 5 years. Went to work for Turner for about 1.5 years, then back to Skanska for a couple of years, and then ended up working for a local company here in Texas called Spa Glass. And Spa Glass has this event that they do. They take their people through called Leadership Through Teamwork. And it's a week-long intensive, like you're working from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. You and a group of 30 of your best friends or 16 of your best friends. And you're staying at a remote location. You're all working together, and you're working on leadership training stuff. I came out of that leadership through teamwork training knowing that I wanted lean to be part of my career for the rest of my career. And that wasn't something that was really offered there with them. They do practice lean, but it's not, they don't have a lean position per se, or a lot of them like some companies do. So 3 months later, right at Christmas time, I ended up quitting my job and starting my own company, and that was late 2018, Christmas of 2018, and been doing that since, working to help people work on continuous improvement and improving their respect for people. So that's basically what I do as a lean coach.
So for those people who don't know what lean is, how would you describe that? What is lean in our industry?
Lean construction is a way for us to work collaboratively in ways that we haven't considered before. It's about changing the way that we think about things. And it's important to challenge ourselves to do this, because if we don't challenge our thoughts, then we're never going to improve. And that's really what it's about. It's about continuous learning. So we've looked at failure in sort of a negative light all this time, when every learning experience we've ever had has been a failure. To be honest, we don't really learn that much from success. We learn a whole lot more from failure. So fail, first attempt in learning, FAIL. So that's one of those things that we really, as an industry, we don't do well. We don't collaborate well a lot of times, and we don't understand. Every company I've ever heard of in construction is focused on their lessons learned. But I guarantee you it's the same lessons over and over and over again, and we never learn them, right? So that's really what I'm trying to help with Lean, is trying to help folks not have to work the way that we're doing. We've got a really, really big issue in our industry, and people don't even understand, or it's not talked about. It's really been kept kind of quiet. In our country, in the United States, the suicide rate for just standard individuals, adults, is like 16.5 per 100,000 people. The suicide rate for veterans, which is a national travesty, is like 32.6 or something, 33 per 100,000 people. The suicide rate in construction is 53.4 per 100,000 people, and we've got to change the way our industry works. It doesn't. We can't keep doing this. It's not okay. And that's really where my passion lies, is trying to get that number into something that's more recognizable as being more normal to the rest of society. And one of the ways we've got to do that is we've got to get more females in our industry. We've got to get more people of color in our industry. We've got to get all of those things that are going to make our industry better, by having the collaboration and all this, an influx of new ideas, and all of these things are just so critical, because we've got to do something.
Yeah. So what do you think, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here because I'm aware of the statistics also. I mean, the suicide rate, obviously, as vets, there's been a lot of, publicity about that. It's not very talked about very much within our industry, though. And so you combine those two, there's a lot of veterans in our industry. What do you think is contributing to the mental health issues? And I know you're trying to improve that, so I would assume you know maybe what some of the root causes are.
It's a lot of the same root causes for veteran suicide. We send people off without their support networks to work remotely, often in construction. We do that in military too. We put, sometimes these workers are living in hotels for months at a time, without the option of even going home, and much less going home every night. The amount of pressure, I mean, people don't realize the amount of money that commercial construction, I mean, a mid-sized project manager is probably going to handle more money in a year than a bank manager would. And people don't realize that. It's crazy. I mean, if you go do a $50 million job in a year and a half or whatever, like we do, I mean, that means that you're averaging, 18 months. So that's like $7.5 million a month or something crazy like that you've got to put revenue. That's like starting a brand new business from scratch in the middle of nowhere, right? It's crazy. And we do it over and over and over again and expect all of this stuff to just be okay. Everybody in the industry works 50 hours plus, and that's not okay either. We use salary as an excuse for slave labor in this industry almost, it's really kind of bad. And then the amount of people doing piecework and just, the amount of the lack of safety and the lack of collaboration, the lack of having a voice. It's not one thing, Scott. It's a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And it's, how we've built this industry, and it's just, it even goes down to the design, bid, build. That whole method of doing business is just so silly. As if I'm the owner of a project, the less I tell you, the more apt I am to get something over on you and get something for free. So there's no benefits for me collaborating, I think, somehow. It's just silly, I mean, it's like, I'm not going to tell you what I want, because then you're going to take advantage of me. I mean, you get that from owners all the time. They're afraid to say what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was going
You
to
run
ask
into
you
that too?
and since you've been doing this, I mean, professionally as your career, have you seen a shift? Is it trending toward the positive? What do you think?
No, the shift is not. I mean, I think that there's a possibility for us to, but no, I don't think that there's a shift towards the positive here.
Yeah.
Projects that we did in 24 months, we're doing in 14 now.
Yeah.
Projects that 10 years ago would have taken 3 years, we're doing in 18 months. And that takes a toll on the people. And we're not adding more folks to do that. That's true, Scott. We're not doubling the team size. We're taking the same size as we always had and giving them some technology and saying, here, you've got all this. Go do it.
Yeah. And, as we talked about a little bit, that's, we know as an industry, we need people. There's a lot of folks retiring out. We know we need new trades. We know we need people that are interested in, my type of job as a superintendent, or people going into project management. So yeah, it's certainly getting tough. We're stretched very thin. I'll be a little vulnerable and transparent for a minute. So I traveled for a little bit too, and that led me to become an alcoholic. I had a major issue with alcohol because I was traveling away from family, and it's tough. So there are some major issues there, and we're not robots. We can't keep that up forever. You're right. And I'm encouraged and motivated because I know there is a lot of folks, you, me, a lot of folks, at least within this movement of lean, trying to get things moving in the right direction. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think you'd agree with that. And I agree with you. I don't think it's shifted yet, but it's certainly keeping me going to see that there are a lot more people really taking it on board. And I don't feel like lean is such a dirty word as much as it was maybe 10 years ago. So in that aspect, I think people are a little more open to it, but I would say because some of the dinosaurs that just were completely closed off to it are retiring out now. And we do have a lot of folks that are in leadership now ready to take this on and run with it.
Yeah. I mean, we've had good projects though. We've had good projects from the beginning of time. And lean's only been around for a little while. So, we have to really look past the language to the universal concepts and precepts, right? Like the golden rule or the platinum rule, which is even better. Treat people like they would like to be treated.
Yeah.
So that's really, lean is a personal improvement system more than it really only works in companies when you get enough people on board that's got critical mass. So it's kind of a funny thing, it's lean is about trying to continuously improve while paying attention to the fact that we're all human, and holding precious what that means. Because that's really what, we talk about respect for people, but, John Miller, whose parents were missionaries, he's a white guy, but his parents were missionaries in Japan. He was raised there. He's taken a stab at looking at the translation of respect for people, and they've gone back for a lot of the translations and found that they were kind of inadequate. And he said that precept from early Toyota writings in the 50s really translates better to holding precious what it is to be human. So that's a lot deeper than just showing somebody respect, right? That's the human condition. That's all of those things that, making sure people are heard, all those kind of things that really make a difference and really change the way that our industry can work.
Yeah. So let me ask, with specific to your service background too. I mean, when you're in, especially the role that you played, you're in this position that it's literally life and death sometimes, right? And injuries, you yourself, you got injured. Same things happen on the job site. So it's that passion for the people that you're taking care of and overseeing. Do you feel that your time in the Ranger Battalion helped you with that, to really empathize more? Do you think that set you on the right path?
I think so. There were some moments that touched me, in my service. I can remember being in Panama for training before the invasion, because we went down there several times. I was there probably 4 or 5 times, and we were at I can't remember the name of the Fort Sherman, and it's residential. It's something residential now. That's where Bob Dylan's boat was wrecked. I don't know if you've heard of that, but you can go snorkeling there around Bob Dylan's boat. But anyway, you could see the city of Cologne across. It's where the locks start on the Atlantic side, and you could see the city of Cologne, Panama, on the other side. And there were probably 50,000 people living in tin shacks and cardboard boxes right along the beach, and just abject poverty. It was unimaginable, to someone who was, and I wasn't raised in any kind of wealth or anything either. I'm a little small town in Arkansas is where I was born and raised. So, but that really touched me, to think that many people are living in that kind of poverty. And it's gone now. And Panama actually has a pretty good economy, and things are going pretty well there for the most part, I believe. Yeah. Nobody's perfect. No country is, but I'm glad to see that things, that we need to give, I think Iraq and Afghanistan some time as well, and see if maybe some of those seeds that we planted there might eventually sprout. I think it's too soon to tell how we did. And I know that bothers a lot of people, especially after what happened last year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough for a lot of the GWAT guys, myself included. I don't think it was done in vain, and that's a whole other story. But speaking of what you experienced, I don't think we know
the final score either.
Sure.
I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Even though we left, and we left, and I was pretty conflicted about us giving back the canal also, after I knew guys that went down there and fought and died. But we did, and it turned out to be okay. China has a lot of influence there, but so do we. And,
for sure.
Panamanians are better because of all of it. So I'm okay with it now.
Well, and what you saw, I had a similar experience when I don't know, it's not country specific, right? I'll give you a good example. Yeah. One, obviously what I saw in Afghanistan was similar, just these extreme folks living in extreme poverty. But it happens even here in our state of Texas. When I lived in El Paso, and you're driving by, what sticks out to me right now is when you're driving by like UTEP, so the University of Texas El Paso, and across this big fence, you see just crazy poverty. A shanty town, and it's heartbreaking. But at the same time, the positive that comes out of it, at least for us, is it really made me appreciate what I have. And I think, sometimes we need that. I know I certainly did. I don't speak for everybody, but I certainly needed to see those kind of things and experience those things to be grateful for what I have. Okay, so onto a more positive note. Okay. So you talked about you had some experience in this industry prior to you going in. So did you find that when you got out, you did, I think, 4 years in active duty. When you got out, did you find it easy to transition back into construction? Was it a different type of construction, or was it the same thing you were doing? And was it just easy to fall back into it?
Well, because I got hurt, I wasn't able to really go back out into the field anymore. I had actually gotten hurt before I was in the Army, and I didn't really tell them. And they didn't get mad at me because I was able to go and do 4 years and do all the things that I did. So they were like, well, I guess it worked out okay. But I actually tore my ACL in 1983 and joined in 1988. So probably one of the only people that's ever gone to, well, one of the earliest people that probably went to Ranger School and Ranger Battalion that had an ACL repair. But I had a staple in my knee that I didn't tell them about, and it ended up migrating into the joint, which has caused me some problems now later in life. I was a little hard and a little dense between the ears, I think, at times. So all of that, all that work that I did made it so that the work in the Army wasn't any harder than any of the work that I'd done before. So, I think that really, I think that all of that sort of prepared me for what I ended up having to do in the Army. And then that sort of prepared me, gave me the leadership skills that I needed to sort of take that and come back and be a leader, on my teams or wherever in the industry.
Yeah, it's don't worry, they're not going to come after you for payment or anything now that you're sharing.
No,
that.
They don't. I asked them about it then. They were like, well, you went to Ranger School, you've been in combat, you graduated Jumpmaster School and MPOC, and I think you're okay.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they don't listen.
I ended up getting out about a month before my ETS date, with my medical out. So
I'd venture to say I don't have anybody that served in Panama besides you that listens to this podcast. So we'll see. Out of the 6 or 7 people that listen. So, but yeah, no. So that's interesting because I think there's a lot of people out there, and I've had other guests that just don't have any type of background. That people are curious. I've told you, I'm mentoring people that call me from different branches they're starting to hear the podcast, or some of the organizations that I assist with. People are getting out and they're interested in our industry and they just don't know how to start or who to contact. And so what I try to tell them is, one, you need to start with, where do you want to go? Do you want to be like, who do you want to work with? Is it the owner's rep, subcontractors, general contractors, manufacturers? And then from there, well, what do you want to work on? And I think people underestimate just how many avenues there are to get into this industry. Because, it sounds cheesy, but look around you, man. You're in the built environment. Find out what your passion is and just run with it. Whether that's a trade.
And females too.
Yeah.
Females too. Female veterans, females of all types. We need them in our industry. And we need to make sure that the work, that the work is being done in a way that here's something that the industry doesn't, we talked a little bit about it, but something the industry doesn't realize. Every time someone has to work overhead or on their knees or on their back, it costs more money and it shortens that person's career. So we need to start figuring out ways to get away from that. Technology is one of the good ways, but using our brains too, one of the cool things I saw, especially for those guys doing like data center work, is those little cushioned stools with rollers on the bottom. Have you seen those?
Oh yeah. It's funny you bring that up. I just brought that up to my client today. The folks that are doing like laying floor. I always thought that was neat. Very ergonomic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody that has to, like even the electricians that are down there working on their hands and knees, running all those lines underneath floors and stuff in data centers, man, every time we put somebody on their knees in that spot, it's costing more money and it's shortening a career and it's taking somebody away from the industry sooner than they need to be that has all this knowledge, and that's what we've got to start. We need folks even looking at that kind of stuff, the ergonomic stuff. We need so much help in this industry. There's so many ways people can help. Clothing for the industry, and even women specific clothing for the industry is such a huge deal, because we have these harnesses and stuff that are just really uncomfortable for women to wear because they're not made for them.
Yeah.
And even vests and hard hat, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is what I get really excited about is we need an influx of people into the industry, and there are lots of people out there. Right now the industry is like 85 to 90% male, and that's a big reason why unfortunately, that's a big reason why the suicide rates are so high, and some of the other problems that we have because of that, and that sort of needs to change.
Yeah, to
We
jump
need to
off
sort
a
of
couple
reflect
things.
society, right? Same way that
For
the
sure.
military is done.
Yep, man, I had a guy I worked for that I love what he said. He said, I like to hire people that don't look like me. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, these are people that are coming from different backgrounds that have a different way of looking at this. And he was humble enough to realize that my way is not the only way. And that stuck with me, and I appreciate that. Especially on the GC side, sometimes we have to make very hard calls that aren't always popular, but I'm doing that with the feedback of the whole team in mind. So it's not, I could say, we're going to do it my way because of my position. Yeah, I could say that, but who does that help? And I'm not going to get good production out of my people. So the ergonomics thing, Hilti actually has something really neat. They've come out with in the last couple of years, that overhead drilling machine. So it's cool to see these things like that. And that little roller that people are using. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of the PPE that's coming out that's fit specifically for females. And, on that note, I've got 3 daughters, and I'm really encouraged. Like, I love taking my oldest to the job site. She'll be 9 in July. So she's old enough now that I feel okay bringing her to the job. And we've got some females that work with us, and I like to invite them out to the job when she's there to show her, hey, look, this is something you could do. This is something that could be in your future. And my wish is that they do get into this industry someday. And I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but I feel like the last decade or so, that aspect of the industry has improved in that we're starting to recognize this. We're starting to show a lot more respect. This is not, the 80s and catcalling the woman that's walking down the street. I'm not saying that doesn't happen anymore. I'm sure it does.
It does.
Yeah, but I certainly, I feel like my generation is really taking a stance on this. And not just ours, but I've had to remove people from the job site because of things like that, because we're not going to stand for that type of behavior. People are here to feel safe, do a job, regardless of what they look like, and go home and feel like they've accomplished something. So I'm a big believer. So we're definitely on the same page on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I wrote an article titled "The Mental Health Crisis in Construction." It's on my blog, which I'll share, link to and all that here. But I used I sourced some images from Reddit to use in the article, and I used porta potties because that's really, when you think about it, it's pretty degrading. That's a horrible place to have to go, especially in the summer or winter when it's really hot or really cold. And most of them are pretty nasty and have, graffiti all in them. And a lot of that's kind of nasty or very sexual or whatever. And that's just the smallest thing. And we have jobs that are still fighting just to get those on them. Guys have to get in their truck and drive down to 7-Eleven or whatever just to go to the bathroom. So we don't even have those on every on every job, and we shouldn't be having those on any job. We should be having a place for people to wash their hands, to use the bathroom like a human, not like you're some kid at a rave.
Yeah.
So it's. And there's more people thinking about that stuff and looking at that stuff, and I feel like that's the kind of thing that's really going to change our industry for the better. Is starting to look at those small things that we could do for the people building our future. Kind of a good idea to probably take care of those people a little bit better than we do. When you think about it.
Well, so yeah, on that point, so we're recording this in early April. Every Tuesday morning I give my safety talk to the whole team. So I'm averaging a little over 100 folks on the site right now. And I'm a big believer in that, hey, if the guys are using a porta-john, I'm going to use a porta-john, and I don't want to use a porta-john. So we have a bathroom on the job site that it will get demoed eventually, but we've maintained it. We all clean it. That's the first thing I look at if I'm taking over a project too, is how do the bathrooms look? How's the cleanliness on the job? We've had comments
That'll
from
tell
the
you more
client.
about how a job's being run than anything.
100%. And there's always, we might have a knucklehead or two that doesn't really respect it and is throwing stuff on the ground. But the last thing I want to do is transition into porta-johns. It is the easy solution.
It is.
But I don't want to use that. And of course I get feedback of, well, can the foreman or the supers, can we lock this bathroom? No, because that's bad leadership. In my opinion, is that I'm going to do what these guys do. I'm going to use the same restroom. We're going to have the same expectations from a safety standpoint. And you talk about the graffiti. I mean, that's a big no-no. And you can go into these porta-johns and see what folks are writing about each other, which is really upsetting, because we as superintendents are trying to create a collaborative culture on the job site. And so, like you said, we can tell everything we need to by looking at these nasty comments. So we try to, I think, at least for my team, we've done a good job of putting a squash on that and making sure that it doesn't happen. So yeah, man.
You have the restaurant. Is it inside your building?
It is inside the building. It is. So we took on the responsibility of buying all of the cleaning supplies, the toilet paper, the soap, the paper towels. But the agreement was with my trade partner team is that, hey, look, we will all go on a rotation to clean this thing, including us. So I was in there sweeping and mopping. So it's us involved as well. So I'm hoping that these guys see the leadership also cleaning these things, and is that, hey, I value this. I want to take care of it. I want to keep it. There's some really good options out there now. Like I'm sure you've seen the toilet trailers that have air conditioning in them. So you don't have to rent, 20 porta-johns. And sometimes it's sad to hear that there's sites that don't have anything, because that's an OSHA violation right there. You have to have something.
It is, but if you look at residential sites, there's tons of them that don't.
Yeah.
They really are.
It's horrible,
and probably some commercial too, as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I always ask
look at
for
hotel construction or hotel like rehab and stuff like that. I mean, those people, I mean, when you look at all the different types of people that are doing construction, there's some that live a lot more like gypsies than most of us do.
Yeah,
they really are.
And
it's sad.
I will say that sometimes the porta-john is the only option. What if you don't have facilities and you're building ground up, right? Yeah. But take care of them.
Or not even building a building.
Right. But take care of the things. And you're right. So I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, but I mean, it also keeps your building cleaner. You don't have guys going outside into the mud, tracking back and forth from a dirty, muddy mud hole where your porta-johns got moved because they're in the way, back and forth inside the building. But the funniest thing that I had happen was my superintendent decided that he was going to open the job on Christmas Eve one year, just because he lived nearby and he didn't care. And we weren't like requiring everybody to work or anything, but some of the workers got so upset because they were going to be they like put a bomb threat on the wall in the bathroom.
Did they feel obligated that they had to be there?
I don't think so. I think they were just making sure that their boss didn't try to obligate them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's a disconnect there for sure. If we're not requiring them, sometimes their boss said, well, you got to catch up.
Yeah. Well, they may not be, but I am, right? One of those.
Yeah, man, and a lot of it, I think it boils down to just that these are simple creature comforts that I think we deserve. We're people. We're humans. Sometimes we are looked down upon in the field. I hate that. I don't think that's as common as it was. I'm fortunate enough to have a great operations team that backs me up that, hey, you can have snacks and stuff at the office and it's all clean. Well, why can't we have that? This is part of our budget as well. And so they definitely back us up, and I'm very thankful for that. Cool. It gets the best production out of these guys. And sometimes it's just, I like going around the job site and trying to learn guys' names and shaking hands, because they're used to the GCs. I feel like just really ragging on them and just being rude because the superintendent can. Well, it doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
So anyway, so back to your service. Do you think there's anything specifically? So we talked about kind of what you saw and what you experienced, just kind of the shock factor. But do you think there's anything as far as like your leadership that you were either under or got to experience as an NCO, you actually leading people. Was there something specific that really helped you with what you're doing now? I think I want to touch on like the stress factor and how that helps you specifically in this industry.
For sure. After I got hurt, well, so being in a Ranger battalion back when I was in, if you got hurt, and I think the military was probably a lot more like that overall back then, you were kind of worthless and kind of, like a non-person now because you weren't part of the mission anymore. So when I got hurt, I got put in charge of these folks who were getting either chaptered out of the Army or removed from battalion, because special operations units can hire and fire, and it doesn't mean you get kicked out of the Army necessarily. It just means you go down the road to a different unit. But some of what we were doing, because we do have privates, there were some guys that ended up needing to get chaptered just because they were never going to be a fit for anything. How they'd made it as far as battalion, I have no clue, because some of them couldn't keep the rooms quiet. It was weird. So I don't know. I guess they needed numbers, something. But they sort of put me in charge of that when I was hurt before, as I was getting ready to get out and getting ready to go on terminal leave and all that stuff. So I spent about not quite 6 months, probably 4 or 5 months in charge of those folks. And, they weren't motivated to do anything because they knew that they were, either leaving the unit or going home for good. So I would say that, just sort of hurting those cats really got me to a point where I could understand how to deal with people and get them to do the things that they needed to do to help all of us be successful, to keep things moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I would say that was a great big learning experience there. But there were so many great leaders there, just tons and tons of great leaders. There's one sergeant major, his name was Leon Guerrero, and after he left, he went and was a nurse, which is a very odd choice. You don't think about someone being in that position turning into a nurse working on folks, because he was fearsome. Even though he was just a little guy, he was about as wide as he was tall. But he was our regimental sergeant major, and if you got caught for some sort of infraction, you always had to do push-ups in the regiment when I was there, and he was one that always, if he caught you doing something, we'd all jump in the grass if we saw him coming, just because he'd make us do push-ups, because he would jump down and do them with us, and you see those kind of examples of leadership, and like you talked about, we're not going to have these things if they don't have these things, and that was, absolutely the kind of leadership that I saw on a daily basis. And the thing about Ranger Battalion is that it's a fight to be there every day. It's not once you get through selection, now you've made it. It's a fight to freaking be there every freaking day. And it's not easy. And there were lots of days that it would have been a whole lot easier to just go ahead and get on the truck or whatever and leave. But I didn't. Made it.
So I think, man, you were very fortunate to have, so the Rangers lead the way, right? So that saying,
yeah. So
you had some really good folks that you were able to serve underneath. And I think that really set a good base for you. Also the stress factor.
The knowledge that there was nothing that I probably couldn't, live through and accomplish if I, just understanding, because there were lots and lots of gut checks. Like I said, every day was a gut check in a Ranger battalion, because there was always somebody gunning for your job and looking to do better than you and move up before you. But there was a lot of competition, but there was a lot of camaraderie too, and the esprit de corps was really high.
Well,
it was a great place. I loved it. I enjoyed my service. I wouldn't change a thing about it other than getting hurt.
Very good. Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. And some of that stuff, obviously that's out of your control, but, I'm glad you got to serve, man. I appreciate those, folks like you that went before me and and
I
laid kind of the
appreciate y'all. I
groundwork.
mean, it's just been so eye-opening getting to talk to, the young folks that served in GWAT and stuff. And it's just been, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I feel really lucky with my service that, I didn't end up having to, everybody wasn't against us there. They were pretty happy with it. They were pretty happy we were there. Most of the Panamanian folks were pretty excited about us being there. And so it wasn't quite the same as y'all's service. So, I feel very lucky and fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, we did have some guys that worked with us, like the third country nationals that did want us
Sure.
there. But yeah, I think widespread, obviously they did. And a lot of those folks just wanted to be left alone and farm and take care of their family. You mentioned it was a fight every day, and I think we could relate that to our industry too. I mean, sometimes when you're on just projects, man, that are dragging on, and maybe there's a difficult relationship that you want to try to maintain, but you're gritting your teeth going through it. And but I think the best lessons I've personally learned in this industry too is just keep my head down and just having that grit to continue through. And I've learned a lot that way personally. So same thing with the service. I think that's definitely a takeaway I had from my service. But so other than the injury, do you think there's anything either in the service or through your path in this industry, was there anything that you think you would change or you would suggest someone else doing maybe differently?
I wouldn't suggest anybody take my path. It's convoluted and strange.
Sure.
Just learn everything you can, every time you can, every chance you can get, right? I mean, it's just, there's so much to learn, and everything changes so much in this industry. I mean, the paint looks the same. We put it on the same, we treat it the same for the most part, but it is not the same product that it was 15 years ago, or 20 years ago now, but once they removed all those VOCs from it, it's a completely different, chemically, it's completely a different product. And there's a lot of stuff that way in construction. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just really wild. It keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I've told some folks that the people I think I respect the most in this industry are the guys later in their career, guys and gals that are retiring, within the next decade, and still say, I learn something new every day. They're still sponges. And I think that's
if you don't,
possible.
then it's your fault.
Oh yeah. And pack up and go home if you think you know everything too, because you're going to get somebody hurt.
You'll learn soon enough that that's not true.
Yeah. Or you might learn the hard way. You might be the one that gets hurt. So a couple quick questions just to kind of wrap us up here. What would you say to other vets within the industry, maybe that are feeling just that drag, and are trying to find that motivation to keep going? Because, we talked about it. It's a tough time to be in this industry. The staffing, the projects getting expedited. So for that guy or gal that's just really dragging along, hating getting out of bed in the morning, what would you say to motivate them?
Boy, that's a tough one. I don't know that I need to say anything to those folks. I think that I think we've got a lot of folks like you talked about that are they put their nose to the grindstone and go. I think that our industry's full of those folks, almost to a fault. And it feels like, almost that the industry's taking advantage of that. I don't know that they need a pep talk from me because they're out there doing it every day. I think that's the only way to get into it, get done. That's the one thing about a bad project. The sooner done, the sooner you're finished with it, right? I mean, that's all. That was always my philosophy, is that if it's bad, we got to get done quicker.
Yeah.
To get out from under it so that we can stop the bleeding.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I don't think it's just saying one thing to motivate those individuals. We have to change as an industry as a whole. So I know it's a tough question. I don't think there's one right answer. So I appreciate that. So to focus on the folks
we've got so many people in this industry are so motivated and self-starters, and it's just, we really are. I mean, everybody, superintendents get up at what time to go do your concrete pours?
Well, I for this project at least, I'm up at 4 a.m. every day. Yeah. So again, I don't think there's a right answer at all to that. So I feel that, and I appreciate you even attempting to answer it. But it's an all-encompassing deal. Even I'm a pretty type A guy, but I have some pretty bad days too. But what keeps me going personally is I have to provide. It's my kids, and I do it because I love them, and I do get to leave the job at some point during the day and go home and see my kids. So there are toxic environments. Obviously, I'm not trying to encourage somebody to stay within that toxic environment. Definitely do what's best for you and your family. And I've said it in the past that if you choose them, that's never the wrong choice. So put you and your family first. I'm not saying to abandon the teamwork by any means, but you've got to take care of you, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not helping your team at all.
You can't take care of anyone else if you don't take care of you.
Yep.
So it has to start there, and that's hard for a lot of us type A's, is because we don't think we need taking care of.
Yeah, and we go to the opposite of that too, is that we're our own worst critic, and we really we take it on board sometimes a lot more than we should, and sometimes that goes down a dark path. And the trauma from the military, there's a lot of trauma in our industry as well, in the construction industry as well. And we don't, it's not necessarily a gunshot, but every time, like I said, every time someone gets on their knees, it shortens their career. And they're going to need knee replacement surgery. That's trauma, being visited on the body. And we've got to start. That's the other thing that we need to do. Like there's the exoskeleton things that they're working on, and I see all of that stuff, and that's exciting because it means that we can put anybody in those positions, and it doesn't matter if it's male or female or whatever, because they can do the job. We need to engineer these things so that everyone, so that we can get anyone to be able to build them. I think it's critical. Yeah. So last question, gearing this specific to our veterans that are transitioning out of the service now, and all those questions that I get about, what are my options? What would you tell someone that's transitioning out to encourage them to join? We need good people. So what would you say to that service member?
Find a mentor. Find somebody that if you can, find somebody that can help you, and ask lots of questions. The biggest thing I've seen in trying to recruit military folks is, this is a new environment and a new career. You're probably going to have to start at the bottom, and that's okay, because you're not going to stay there long, because you've got these basics down that these other people don't have. You've got leadership training, and you've got how to work as part of a team, and a lot of things that other people don't get. That's been beat into you in the military, and you do all those things like second nature. So you've got a leg up on everyone else, but you really, all of your, if you spent 20 years in the military, it doesn't necessarily translate to a direct job as an executive at a construction company. It just doesn't. So, you're probably going to have to start at the bottom, and that's okay, because you need to learn. There's a lot to learn. There's so much to learn about construction. We talked about it changing all the time, and there's just so much to know. You can't ever learn it all. Oh my gosh, and it's so exciting to get a new set of plans and to see what all the details are and all that kind of stuff. I know you know what I'm talking about, Scott.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely the highs are highs and the lows are pretty low, but yeah, it is exciting, and it, not that it's funny, but everybody has that comment, Brian, about you got to keep humble. And they say it in one way or another, but I feel like every guest I've talked to has said that, and I've shared before that it is difficult to tell that prior, master sergeant or sergeant major, you're going to have to probably start as assistant this or start from the bottom. However, I say the same thing you do, that you might start there, man, but you're probably going to move up pretty quick, just because of the skills that you bring to the table, regardless of what your MOS is, what we took away from the service and leading folks and having a lot of soft skills.
Decision-making skills, even.
Yep.
Just, I mean, you're that's beat in your head. A good decision right now is better than a great decision tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Brian, man, I appreciate your time so much. And it's been fun to get to know you. We had a good chat before the podcast, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time we chat. If folks want to reach out to you, how would they do that? Tell us a little bit maybe about your company or how they can reach you directly.
So my company's called Field Driven Lean, but I lean's in the name, but it's really, I can help with just about anything. It doesn't have to be specifically lean. I've got years and years of operational experience. So if there's something that you're looking at, I've helped some quality folks and some designers and stuff like that. It's not all just construction teams. So there's a lot of different jobs out here. So. But if folks want to get a hold of me, they can email me or reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's Brian Winningham. I think they can find me through Field Driven Lean on LinkedIn as well. But my email is bmw@fielddrivenlean.com. FIELDDRIVENLEAN.com. So my initial, that's my initials. That's not my car.
Yeah,
I don't have
lucky
a
BMW,
guy. Those are my initials.
Yeah.
That's I'd love to hear from folks and especially other veterans. I'd love to I've tried throughout my career to get veterans more interested in being in construction. I've actually got a few that I still mentor that I've been able to bring into the industry, and I really want to do that more. And if you've got some questions or you're interested in getting into the industry, I have some connections all over the country too. So maybe even able to help you with that. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
really, really interested in talking to folks about that. So
good.
Also, I do a little writing. I talked a little bit about my article that I wrote, the Mental Health Crisis in Construction. You can find all my writing at rangerwinning.com. So that's everybody gets a nickname in the military, and since my last name was too long, I was immediately Winnie when I got into the military. So my platoon sergeant gave me that name, and I'm proud of it. So.
With my last name, I'm terrified of what they would nickname me. I'm sure basic would have been really fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Brian, thank you, man. I appreciate it, and I look forward to our chat again soon.
That's great. Thanks, Scott.
All right, brother. If you're a military veteran in the construction industry, or you're in the construction industry and support our military vets, and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, you can find me at constructionvetpodcast@gmail.com, or send me a message on LinkedIn. You can find me there at Scott Friend. Let's share the stories and motivate others.